Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining me. I am really excited about today's guest. Elsie Gilmore holds a master's degree in environmental law and policy from Vermont Law School. And along with being an advocate for environmental protection and basic human rights, she also engages in the social art like talking to and hugging strangers. With a career spanning 20 years as a web developer and the founder of Women with Moxie, a women's networking company, Elsie has worn many hats. From Vermont farm girl to multi business owner and now a published author, she continues to pursue the awesome sauce in her life. Her newest book is How to Find Joy in a Capitalist Hellscape. Elsie, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
So, Elsie's both a friend and a colleague, and she did the fabulous website. If you go check out the daniellepalli.com, that was her magic. So, Elsie, as we kick this off, can you just tell us a little more about yourself?
Sure. So I grew up on a small dairy farm in Vermont, which is a very unique way to grow up. I am 51 years old and I went to a two-room schoolhouse, which most people my age did not go to a two-room schoolhouse. So it was, I do think growing up that way shaped my view of the world in many ways. Uh, I ended up an environmental activist, and I think it's because I grew up in nature, surrounded by nature and animals, and it made me really appreciate it. So I also grew up as the internet grew up, and being in a small town, that was an amazing thing. And I don't think everyone in my small town reacted to it the same way I did, but I have always been a very curious person. And so I was able to sit in my little apartment in my small rural town and talk to people like in the Netherlands. I would go in these Yahoo chat rooms, and one time there were these guys in the Netherlands in their music studio, and they told me to turn on my audio, which I rarely did, and they played music for me from the Netherlands, and I was like, this is amazing. And so I ended up becoming a web developer because I was so interested in how that all worked. And as you said, then I had a women's networking business called Women with Moxie, which was an amazing experience where I got to meet all these incredible women and help them collaborate with their businesses. And on top of that, I'm also, an activist, uh, mostly about environmental issues, but also social justice issues, which are also environmental issues are social justice issues. So,
And what a great perspective like the internet gave us from a small town to be able to connect with people all over the world. It really gets you to look at things from a different viewpoint if you're open to that, which you are obviously. So, what inspired you to write your best-selling book, How to Find Joy in a Capitalist Hellscape?
so when you're an activist, you tend to focus on the problems, and the problems are some of them are really big. And so as I looked around and just saw so much division in this country and just everyone at everyone's throat, I knew that we won't be able to solve these big problems unless we do it together. And so while we're fighting with each other, corporations, are doing terrible things to the environment, and they're doing terrible things to us, really, paying low wages and uh, just their policies resulting in people being impoverished and not being able to pay their rent. And so when I looked around, I was like, we need to all stop fighting with each other so we can tackle some of these big issues. And so that's a lot of what my book is about.
And you know what I really liked about your book is that you did have a very balanced approach to the political and socioeconomic landscape. You educated without being heavy-handed. It didn't come across as judgmental, as some books can accidentally do. Yours was very balanced. So, how do you write a book that critiques capitalism without making it overly political?
Right. So politics is just about people. Everything political has to do with people and how they're impacted by the politics and the policies. So to me, um, most of the people in the world are the ones who are impacted by capitalism and not the ones controlling it. So it doesn't matter what political orientation you are or religious orientation you are, you're still one of the 99%, right? And so there's no reason to, the whole point is to get us to stop looking at our differences and start looking at the
Mm.
things we have in common, right? And the ways we can help each other.
I like that. And what really stood out to me is your book is essentially advocating for people to design a life on their terms versus what culture, society, or even family might expect. So, how do you recommend someone who's trying to find their identity and sense of self outside of all of these expectations start?
Right. So I think it comes back to the word should. Are you doing things because you think you should do them, or because you think your family or society or your religion or your political affiliation thinks you should do them? Or are you doing them because you really want to do them and you think they're the right thing to do or they're the right thing to do for you? So I think it's really about expectations because I know when I'm doing something just because I'm expected to, it gives me anxiety, right? Because I don't really want to do it. And sometimes you do that to be kind, but most of the time, um, you can choose to not do what's expected.
Yeah, and people get resentful. They do all the shoulds and they resent the other person. The other person doesn't know why, where if they just set that healthy boundary for themselves, would have been better for everybody.
Right, exactly. Sometimes we do things and because we don't want to, and then we feel resentful, and then it's like, well, that's not,
Yeah.
that's not a healthy way to be. So it's better to just be honest, about what you really want to be doing and try to find a way to do what makes you happy. There's nothing wrong with doing what makes you happy, right?
Yeah, and losing the guilt.
Yeah.
Okay, so you offer a plethora of tips for living a joy-filled life, and we can't cover all of them in this interview, and we want people to pick up your book and learn everything. But could you pick maybe two or three tips that listeners can apply in their own lives?
Yes. So some of the easier ones, um, spend time in nature.
Yes.
Because nature grounds us. And the other thing about spending time in nature is that it helps remind us why we want to protect nature, right? So it helps each of us become a little bit of an environmental activist, because we see what we need to protect. Other ways to find joy that are pretty easy are get to know your neighbors, because your neighbors are the ones who are going to be closest to you when emergencies happen, right? So if you know your neighbors, I I know a lot of my neighbors actually, and so we live in Florida, as I'm sure your listeners know. And when there's a hurricane, I contact my neighbors and see who's going to stay in the neighborhood when I'm not, or if I'm going to stay for the storm too. And if I leave, I can contact them and say like, hey, is there any electricity? Do we have a lot of damage? So knowing your neighbors really helps you be resilient in the face of emergencies or anything that happens. Um, yeah, those are two big ones, I think.
Yeah, nature for sure. I've given people a prescription to go out in nature on my coaching calls. And the only reason they do it is, Danielle, you told me I had to go for a walk and it was the best thing I ever did because they'll feel guilty about doing something for themselves. And I'll say, you can blame it on your coach. I'm telling you, go outside.
Well, and as I'm sure you know, like we have to fill up our own cup first, right? If
Yeah.
Lots of times we think we're a very selfless person because we only do things for other people and not ourselves, but that's a great way to get burnt out and then not have the capacity to help other people. So, if we make sure we're healthy and happy first, then we can offer more to the people around us.
Yeah. And getting to know our neighbors more than just a wave as you go to pick up the mail. I'm often guilty of this myself. But there was the longest study on happiness. And they talked about how people think they're bothering other people by random conversations. And so he challenged them to go and just like sitting on a park bench, talk to the person next to you. And in
Was
every,
this
go ahead.
was this from a book called The Power of Strangers? Because there's a book called The Power of Strangers, and he talks about the same kind of thing, like especially in places like England, people don't think other people want to talk to them, but when they do surveys, they really do. They want you to talk to them. So it's our perception versus reality.
I'm not sure. And the person that I'm referring to, his name is escaping me, and he did the longest Harvard study on happiness. I promise
Oh,
I will put it in the description underneath as you're watching the
okay.
video because the name's out of my head at the moment. But this was like a lifetime study. And one of the things that he found out, full stop, what brings us happiness is human connection.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. And there's studies too about people who end up addicted to drugs. One of the things missing in their life is connections, close human connections.
yeah. So, my next question, this is maybe a tough one. How do you stay true to yourself during challenging times?
It's definitely a practice because there was a time where I was bad at it when there was a lot of turmoil in the world, and I realized that I was not staying true to myself. I had become a very angry person. And so I will tell you I went to see Henry Rollins. I don't know if you know who he is. So many, many years ago, he was in a punk band. But since then, he's just kind of an opinion person. And he's had columns, in different publications, and he does these spoken word tours. And his spoken word tour and he's very famous. If you look him up, I'm sure some people in your audience know who he is. His spoken word tour is basically him speaking for 3 hours nonstop. Okay. So I've seen him twice, I think. Yeah. So during one of the spoken word tours that I went and saw him on, of the thousands of words that he said, the ones that I remember, he was, this was in like 2017 or
Mm.
2018, and he was talking about a certain group of people, and it doesn't even matter what group of people. You can take any group of people who you think maybe don't like you or don't like people like you. And he said, "You can hate me, but you can't make me hate you."
Oh,
And I thought that was so profound because what he was saying was no matter how you act, I will still act the way I act as a person.
yeah.
I am a kind person. And so you can be mean, but that doesn't make me mean. I'm still kind. And I just never forgot that because that is what it is. I see so many people react to meanness from others with meanness back. And I'm like, but if you don't think that group is good, why are you acting like them? Right?
Yeah.
Why aren't you acting like you? If you think you're a good person or a kind person, how can that person make you a not nice person?
Yeah, well said. And I'm noticing in your bio, which we will have in the description of this episode, that you described your Substack publication, Sunday Mornings in Bed, as that lady who will not stop talking. Is there a future 3-hour spoken word tour for you?
Um, Maybe. I don't know. I'm not sure I'm as interesting as Henry Rollins.
I think you're fascinating. So the next tough question, I'm throwing a lot of hardballs at you. Many people may be feeling the frustration of a system that doesn't seem to care about them. So, how do you practice self-care under these conditions?
Right. So the first thing to keep in mind is that this system that does not care about you, they want you to feel bad about yourself so that you will buy all of the things they want to sell you. If you don't like the way you look, they will sell you things for that. If you don't like the way you feel, they will sell you things for that. So, almost all of the ways you feel can be helped without buying anything. It's amazing. So um, you can do so many things for free that will help your health. If you're feeling insecure, which is what they want you to feel, you can go see a therapist instead of buying a new car or new clothes or some cosmetic surgery. So most of the ways that you feel that are negative can be helped without contributing to the system that wants you to feel bad about yourself.
Yeah, and it's all about the mindset. When people, and I talk to a lot of people, myself included, as we're aging, things change in our bodies, and sometimes our bodies rebel, and we're like, what the heck is happening? And people get really down on themselves. And some of the work that we do in coaching is just, who told you that you're not gorgeous and perfect because you're not 20? The goal is not to stay 20 forever. And if society says that that's beautiful, you don't have to buy into what society says.
And I will tell you, my a friend and I were just talking about it. Even girls in their 20s and 30s are starting to get cosmetic surgery to stay ahead of any wrinkles. I'm like, tw in your 20s, everyone's gorgeous. Like, why would you do anything to your body in your even your 30s? It just
Yeah.
it makes me feel very sad. And there's this whole TikTok, the image, the online image and influencers and all this stuff. And it's like
And all you
it's
need is what
just
I have, a Zoom filter that just like, and apparently my filter is blurry. It says it says to enhance your appearance, and you go and you tweak it and it makes me blurry. So apparently to enhance my appearance, I have to be blurry. But that enough about that.
yeah. And
One thing I
so
did
there's
want to go ahead.
just number one, the perception that women are not allowed to age. That's
Yeah.
complete bull pucky. I don't know if I can swear on here.
Yeah, go for
Um,
it.
complete bullshit. Um, so, we are convinced again by capitalism and society and people around us and even other women that we look old, that we aren't aging right, and all just you could spend unlimited amounts of money on trying to look young, and you still wouldn't necessarily feel good about yourself because none of that stuff has anything to do with how you feel about yourself, So,
It's all coming from that place of lack. And by the way, I'm going to look for an excuse to use the word bullpucky sometime today in conversation. It's probably going to come out in a coaching call, but I will try to behave myself. But one more thing on that before we move on. I did a meditation for Insight Timer on learning to love your body as you age. And it was meant for people in their 50s and 60s and beyond. And I was getting emails from people in their 20s and 30s, to your point, saying, I was really down on myself. I needed this. So, teaching us as young women and as we grow up that we are whole and perfect as we are. And yes, if you want to exercise or change your body in a way to be healthy and to feel good about yourself, that's a little bit different than trying to please everybody else.
well, right. And again, you can do things for yourself if they're for the right reasons, but definitely not to try to please other people and not because you've been convinced that there's something wrong with you. I mean, people wear makeup. I don't wear makeup. That's totally cool. I don't think it's a terrible, horrible thing that people wear makeup. So, you know, there's things you can do that make you feel good that aren't, to try to play into
Yeah,
society's terrible messaging about women's looks.
absolutely. Okay. So you are very clear and outspoken about causes you care about and believe in. Is there a tip that you can provide for writers out there who have a message to share, but maybe they're having trouble finding their voice?
I think the best thing to keep in mind is that there is someone out there who's waiting to hear what you have to say because it will make them feel less alone. So, any cause that you believe in, someone else believes in, and they're just waiting for someone to talk about it. So, I don't think you should ever think that there won't be an audience or that people won't appreciate it. Will some people hate it? Yes, some people will hate it, but that's just it's hard to say anything that isn't controversial, that doesn't have people who are going to disagree with you. So you can't really think about it like that.
Yeah, and everybody has their own baggage, their own story, and you can't always tell what's going to say be a trigger. So it's
Well, and one of the chapters of my books is not everyone will like you, and that's okay.
yes. Yeah. Well, we like you very much, Elsie Gilmore. So tell us, where can we go to learn more about your work so we can buy your book? Tell us everything.
Yeah, so I'm sure this will also be in the description below this video. My website is elsiegilmore.com, and I'm also very active on Instagram at Elsie_Gilmore_author.
Okay. And your books are, or your, excuse me, your book. Oh, maybe it's a sign. There's more to come.
There
Your
is.
book is available not just on Amazon, but you can order it through your favorite local bookstore as well, correct?
Yeah, so the landing page for the book is howtofindjoybook.com, and you can actually order it kind of direct. You can order it through bookshop.org, which is my favorite place to order books. You can order it on Barnes and Noble, pretty much wherever you would normally order books, you can find it.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.